Everyone to this week's edition or this week's interview of the Belonging series by Imperial as One, where we explore the BAME experience. And this week I'm pleased that we've got a good friend of mine, Dr. Donald Palmer, who's an associate professor of immunology at the Royal Veterinary College, the RVC, but he's also the co-founder of the REACH Society. So this week we're going to have our discussion with Donald, and I know we're in for a really good treat this week.
So, wait, you're putting me under pressure.
I'm not putting you under any pressure, Donald, man. This is just our normal banter.
Normal chat. One of the things I will say, Wayne, I worry when you sent me the flyer, because people seen the flyer and then see me in person. They think, hold on, what? There's some sort of touching has been going on here. It doesn't look like
Photoshop, man. Photoshop.
So,
no, Donald, it's a real pleasure to have you as one of my interviewees this week. You know, normally I'm used to seeing Donald in the position which I'm in and interviewing people or chairing sessions. So it's a great opportunity for us to just get to know Donald a little bit more about his early upbringing, so some of the things which have helped to inspire him to get to where he is now, the kinds of challenges he may have faced, and how he's overcome those things. So, Donald, just give us a little idea about your upbringing. What is it that helped to motivate you to kind of like achieve what you've achieved so far?
Well, Wayne, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to those that are listening. And I hope you know, the stories that I have and my journey can hopefully inspire folks that are listening and others. So thank you for this opportunity. I guess, you know what it is, in many ways, it's, you know, one could look at luck, but also it's about preparation. And really, I'm in debt to my parents. So I grew up, I was born in South London.
Okay.
I don't know if any South Londoners are in the house.
Well, hold that against you.
And you know, my parents came from Jamaica in the late 50s. So I guess you could classify them as part of that Windrush. You know, we often use the Windrush era, not just to include 48, but, you know, the mass migrations of people from Caribbean and other places. So they're part of that. And, you know, I'm in debt to my parents because they came from humble beginnings. My dad was a bus conductor. My mom was a cleaner in a hospital. And what's amazing, eventually those women who were cleaning became auxiliary nurses. And so I come from a very typical, if you like, background back in the 60s and 70s. And one of the, not necessarily breaks, but one of the real sort of highlights that I remember was very early age. I was really interested in science. And I asked my parents for a chemistry set. Now, remember, there's 6 of us, so there's a large number of us in the family. Back in those days, it was quite expensive to get a chemistry set. But my parents said, yeah, okay. And I guess that was, you know, the catalyst. And that's a real important sort of benchmark. And yeah, I had a chemistry set. Bit of a disaster, really, because I almost burnt down the house. I turned the bath green, which led to some discussions, let's say.
I understand those types of discussions.
Yeah. Well, they weren't discussions then, but yeah. So that was the early stage. Another sort of benchmark again, in the area of science. So I went to Ernest Bevin School in South London. In fact, the same school as our London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, went to, but clearly of different age, different time. And again, it was my chemistry teacher, Mr. Irving, who was a real inspiration. Many of the chemical reactions we did then, you just couldn't do now. I mean, health and safety, looking back, it was amazing. And what I had then was, at that time at school, like, you know, I was doing what was then called CSEs. So we're really going back. They used to refer to CSEs as the poor man O-levels. So what would happen was, at school, there'd be the top, middle, and lower set. And you know, we look back at that period, particularly when it comes to, you know, BAME children, etc., you know, where they were literally just put into a band and you couldn't escape. And there have been many books written about, you know, seeing Black children as educational subnormal, etc. But it was Mr. Irving who, you know, really took a shine, and I got a prize. I got a book.
Okay.
And in fact, I still have that book to this day.
Fantastic. What was it?
It was a chemistry book.
Okay.
About organic chemistry.
Okay.
And it's still in my bookshelf. So so in all my travels, I've carried that book, and that was really key. And so one thing I often say, I'm now a chair of governors of a school, and I visit schools, etc. And one of the things I say to teachers, you know, you have the potential to inspire so many young people. And again, you'd be surprised, just one comment or one activity that you do could really set someone on their trajectory. And equally is the reverse, by being negative, by saying negative things, by not giving young people opportunities, you also can then blunt their progression. And I guess the final thing before you ask the other question, so this is really about early life, but I really got into Marvel Comics, and sort of my hero was Spider-Man.
Okay.
You know, people laugh when I've told the story. But so I used to do a paper round. So for those of you who are I guess millennials, etc., may not know what a paper round is, so, which is really funny. I remember going to a school telling the story, and then said I went and I did a paper round, a group of primary school kids, and they all looked at me really perplexed. And then I had to explain what happened. And even when I was explaining to them that I used to carry a one load of paper and then put it in the letterbox, it still didn't compute, because they literally, you know, you realize the generation, because everything is online. But back in the day, it wasn't.
That's
and I just, you know, would carry a whole bag of papers, hated Sundays, because you remember Sundays used to be the massive one with the fixed Sunday supplements. And so really walking up the hill in South London, I'll be reading Marvel Comics, and Spider-Man was the hero. You know, I even drew some of my own comics out of that. You know, and there is that similarity. Peter Parker wore glasses. Parker loved science. So yeah, there was that sort of areas of, you know, inspiration.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So you had influence. Your parents, were your parents pushy? Did they, or were they? How did your parents motivate you? Apart from the fact that they seemed to encourage you by the fact that you showed an interest in chemistry, and even though things were hard, they were able to go out and get you that chemistry set. So to me, it sounds like they were encouraging of you to achieve. Would I be right in that?
No, absolutely. And many of that generation really wanted their children to succeed. And that was really important. And one of the things my parents did, and in fact, it was my father. So my father, despite being a bus conductor, was also a man of many trades. He believed in
Right.
the importance of having trade. So he would do DIY and also would cut my hair.
Right.
So as a
Okay.
young man, he would cut my hair and using those very old-fashioned machines.
Yeah.
I can still feel the pain now. and while he was cutting my hair, he would be delivering practically sermons. He would be encouraging me, and I've got phrases that I still remember, which perhaps didn't really, as a kid of 10, 11, it doesn't resonate. But the things he was saying, which I still hold dear now, every generation must rise, not fall.
Yeah.
And it was, his desire was, I've got to make sure I do right by my children to give them the platform that they can succeed.
Yeah.
And that's literally how I've lived my life. I don't know. Again, I recently watched Boys in the Hood, and we've seen it all before. And there's a scene whereby where Lawrence Fishburne is cutting Cuba Gooding's hair.
Yeah.
That's that, I don't know if anybody, maybe I don't know if anyone's listening who understands, and that scene resonates with me.
Yeah,
it really resonates with me.
Yeah.
So I sit there, and my dad would be talking, giving me advice, etc. And he was preparing me for the future.
Brilliant. So I like that speaking words of wisdom, speaking words of encouragement, speaking words of inspiration into you. And that helps me to understand who you are, Donald, because as far as I'm concerned, whenever I've been in your presence or in anything which you've done, you always speak words of wisdom and encouragement. I'm not being kind. I'm saying it as it is. Remember, this is our candid interview, right? So
No, but normally a candid interview is just you and I talking.
That's fine.
But the fact is, it's not one where there's loads of people.
Right. And so tell me about, so you've had that encouragement, you've had that motivation, you've got that desire from like the comic books, but you've also got that inspiration that you want to achieve academically. So how did we get from that position from you wanting to achieve and then going on to education? How did that all work out?
Well, one of the key thing was, despite the fact that, academically, it looked like that I would do well at school.
Mm-hmm.
They basically, apart from my one science O level, I ended up doing doing CSEs.
Yeah.
So basically, the school decided, and I just still remember, and I look back, and I just know so many talented children, particularly black boys, because Early Bevan was an all-boys school. Mm-hmm. And I believe it still is, apart from the sixth form. And so many bright kids. Mm-hmm. And we all ended up doing CSEs. We all...
Was this just the black boys, or how was it?
Well, Early Bevan at that time, and it's two things. And there's a large number, I can't recall the percentage, but just with some of my friends and some of the kids who I knew were really, we just did CSEs. And the only way it could be counted as an O level, and again, these are for those people, individuals who can remember that, you had to get a grade 1.
Right.
You had to get a grade 1 in order for it to be equivalent to an O level. Yeah. But more importantly, in order to progress to the next stage. Yeah. Back then, if you were going to do A levels, you had to get grade C and above. Yeah. So literally, I still remember that conversation with my parents. Look, Mom, Dad, I'm just doing CSEs. Yeah. And the irony is, you were literally taught the same. You were sitting in the same classroom with those kids that are doing O level. But what would be, some kids would sit the O level biology, and some kids would sit the CSE biology. Mm-hmm. I was angry, and then that anger led really for me to say, right, I'm going to show them. And I used that anger and then I got all grade ones.
Fantastic.
And then I said, all right, I'm not. And then they offered me a place at the sixth form, but I said, no, I'm not going. I said, I'm not going. And then I went to South London College to do an ordinary national diploma in medical sciences. That was an OND, which I think is now called an HND or something. So yeah, it's just that I just used that anger because based on the reports I got from school, they felt, yeah, this young man, could achieve. And part of that was, I'm getting, I've got my prize for chemistry. Yeah, really doing well. But in the end, having to sat CSEs. And
there's a lot that we could develop on the reasons why.
Exactly, yeah.
Because we know about Bernard Cord's book, which was why the West Indian child is being made educationally subnormal within the British education system. That was written when I'm assuming that you, like myself, would have been kind of like quite young, you see, and so our parents would have known about that, but they were very trusting.
No, in back then, your parents are very trusting. I mean, you have to remember, they looked up to Britain. They referred to Britain as the motherland.
That's right.
So they use all that language. And interesting, because of, I have an older brother. And also what was going on then, sort of in the mid-70s, was the issue around the police. With stop and search. And I remember my parents and their friends and that generation weren't really believing in the young people about what was going on the street. They would say, no, that can't be true. They trusted authority in a way. They saw the school system, they saw the police as authority. And it's only later on, when there were the riots and the Deptford fire, etc., that people start to recognize, hold on, there is a real problem.
There's an issue.
The community, came together.
All right. I know we could explore that whole topic, right? But I'm gonna move us on, because even though I think it's a fascinating topic, and we could definitely have more discussions on that. But what I was just thinking is, so having done because I'm thinking of where you are now, associate professor, right, at the RVC. So how did we go from this child who they had kept in the classroom with the guys who were doing the O-levels, but said that you could only do the CSEs, to the young man who says, you know what, I'm not stopping at that school because there's something wrong, right, to where you are now as an associate professor? What is that journey? What struggles have you had, and how have you overcome them as you've gone through?
So part of the struggle. So I remember at university, again thinking that I would do well, but I didn't do well. I got a 2-2, right? So and I was thinking then maybe of pursue further studies. I liked immunology. Then I got into the immunology bug. So we're talking now sort of mid-80s. But I wasn't successful. I remember one of the academics who came up to me afterwards and said, you really did well, at your degree. You were just a mark shy of a 2-1, which I had, looking back now, when we talk about, the
awarding gap.
The awarding gap, very, very much so. I don't know if I was part of that, but it's something I've reflected since and looked back, and I still remember. There weren't that many black people when we were going at university, but I do recall, again, meeting some amazing, talented, bright young people back then, and surprised by some of the marks they got back then. And so, but one of the fortunate thing was, my first job actually was at Imperial College.
Oh, okay, go
But,
on.
but before Imperial, it was called the Hammersmith Hospital.
Okay, that's where I
That's
I
where
am
you are
now.
now. So,
Right.
so before Imperial expanded,
Mhm.
it was called the Royal Postgraduate Medical School.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm really showing my age now, and I managed to get a job as a technician.
Right.
But then, while I was in the lab, um, uh, you know, I was fortunate that I met a number of people. So I was doing some research, but I was involved in sort of blood typing
Right.
back then. And you know, one of the major breakthroughs was I ended up doing a master's in immunology.
Right. Right.
Did that at King's.
Right.
But I ended up doing, the breakthrough came, they said, oh, you've got to do a research project. So I said, oh gosh, I've got to do a research project. And so at the time I was about to do a research project, a very young Robert Leckler, who's now Professor Sir Robert Leckler
Yeah.
at King's, came back to the UK. And someone said, oh, he might be able to help. I guess looking back, I just knocked in his office and just said, have you got a project? And he said, yes. I wouldn't know if he said no, but I ended up doing my master's project with him. And by doing that, I was then, you know, partly doing that part-time while I was still doing the work, my technical post full-time. So in the evenings, I'll be trying to do the research project. And therefore, in the other lab, I would meet PhD students and postdocs.
Yeah.
And then I start talking to them.
Yeah.
You know, and they were saying, oh, this is how you go about. Because I guess, Wayne, this is the real thing was, so I really didn't know much about academia. And
Right.
that was the point. It was really showing a bit of a curiosity, but more importantly, it was others who showed me the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because I was just doing a master's, and then someone said, oh, well, you know, when you're doing your master's, you can do a PhD.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's something that's worthwhile. And then speaking to PhD students at the time and postdoc. I remember one good friend of mine, he's now, I think he's probably a professor now, Stephen Mann, who, yeah, he gave me some really great advice about, you know, doing a PhD. He was doing a PhD at the time. So, and it's just that, getting real advice and being informed, and then about potentially seeing possibilities.
Yeah.
And then I did my PhD at Northwick Park.
Right.
My supervisors were Professor Elizabeth Simpson, who's an FRS, and Professor Julian Dyson. So,
Yeah.
you know, and it was just being able to meet people who can provide, you know, me with the appropriate information that I was able then to say, and that's really what we were talking about in terms of navigating the space.
Yeah.
Because if you're not aware, you don't know.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate that I met, you know, some individuals who were able to tell me these are the steps of what you need to do.
Yeah.
So and that's really important.
So they acted a bit like sponsors or mentors. How would you describe them?
Yeah, I would describe them. Maybe they probably didn't think they were mentors, but I was literally talking to them every day.
Yeah.
Because part of that was I remember friends would tell me, you know, when I would go to university, you know, I would meet some. I came from. I mean, again, we're talking in the early 80s from an atypical background that went to uni. So I didn't do O levels or A levels.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
So you know, so knowing the roots and the journey and things like that, and that period of real foundation knowledge I didn't have. It was when I went to university and subsequently at Hammersmith where people told me of the information. that I then started to do further reading, more wider reading. And then I realized, oh, these are the steps you need to take in order to navigate that pathway.
So because you've had a kind of like unconventional, for some we would think of it as an unconventional route, as you've just highlighted. You didn't do the O levels, you didn't do the A levels, you got onto your degree, and then you went on and got your master's PhD, and partly working at the same time as doing a lot of this.
Yeah.
How has that helped to motivate or to frame your viewpoint on education and the need and for example, the need for role models and because when I think about your Reach Society activities, how has all of that helped to develop your thinking behind these things?
Well, no, that thank you, Wayne, for asking that question, because that's really an important framework. So one of the things I recognized was, I managed to get to where I am to a certain degree, maybe by luck or maybe because I just talk a lot and I just ask questions. And I realized there is a certain protocol or skill set that you need. And so one of the things with Reach Society, and for those of you listening who don't know about Reach Society is an organization of Black professional role models that reach back to encourage and motivate and inspire young people to fulfill their potential. Because it's of what the adage is, what you can see is what you can be. And one of the things that I've been involved, whether it's with Reach Society or mentoring young people, is of making sure they're aware and can identify the skill sets that are necessary to progress. And equally, the thing that we've done with Reach Society, and I'm really grateful for the two other founders, dear friends, Dr. Dwayne Neal OBE and Rob Neal OBE. You can see I'm with very good company, and we set up Reach Society based, and it came from very much from the Reach report. So if I'm allowed to just explain for a couple of minutes.
Go ahead, please.
Was published in 2007. It was an independent report that was looking at how the government of the day, which was a Labour government, and it was about recognizing, trying to aspire and the attainment level of Black boys and young Black men. And it was recognized there were levels of attainment, etc., which still exist. And as you and I have spoken about, has been existing for many, many years. And they made 5 recommendations. And one of them was a national regional role model program. So this was launched around 2008. So they had a combination of national role models and regional. I was one of the regional role models. And the idea was we were trying to inspire young people, and the program seemed to be incredibly successful. But then 2010, a coalition government came in, and then this was then sort of scrapped. And it was during that time where Dwayne, myself, and Rob said, well, look, this program seems to be going okay. Maybe we could take some of this and develop it further. We spoke then to appropriate people. They said, you can do what you want with it. And we then, used the word Reach Society in order to reach back. And now we've been going for 10 years. The thing that we've been doing is again trying to inspire young people, and so we have a rostrum of role models, and it's really trying to negate really the perceived negativity that is fostered in our community. I read a report, Wayne, not so long ago that, and it's not surprising, they did a report about how Black people are perceived in the media for the last 2 or 3 years. And others may have seen it. Somewhere in the region of 70%, particularly Black boys, was of negativity. It was startling. And once you scratch below the surface, you realize there are a whole host of talented individuals from our community, but our young people never get a chance to interact, talk to them, or engage with them. And that's what we've been doing for the last 10 years, is trying to do. We've hosted a careers conference. where we get a large number of role models, and they get a chance to talk to young people about their careers, identifying pathways of success. And, you know, we have a host of, people from private sector, third sector, etc. And in fact, I'm grateful that Imperial College had a stand there, and I know you were there, and others. And literally, young people are actually seeing themselves. So all of a sudden, they're speaking to an engineer who looks like them, and you know, it's not from Mars. They work and live in London. Then they're speaking to an entrepreneur. They're speaking to a professor. So and they realize, hold on a moment, this narrative that I've been reading about is no longer true.
Not true.
And they get opportunities. They may get opportunities to work shadow. They just get information that can help. And we were really hoping the careers conference this year would run, but unfortunately, for COVID, that wasn't possible. But our last careers conference, we had over in London, we had over 17,000 people.
Yeah, 1,700.
And they engaged for the whole day and talking to young people and working out, okay, so this is something that I can do and I can be. It's about seeing possibilities.
Seeing possibility. I love the strap line which you have, which is what you can see is what you can be. So what you can see, and I know for a fact that the work which the Reach Society does is not just the careers conference. It is about empowering. It's about providing mentorship for young Black boys, young Black girls, anyone. And you guys, I think you're downplaying some of the achievements of the Reach Society, because I know full well that you guys have been instrumental in helping to get the likes of Durham University increasing their diversity just by some of the initiatives that you guys have been pushing for, right? And it's to be commended, without a doubt.
No, thank you. And I guess it's because as I'm part of that structure, and I know what that's like. And I guess this is really the point now, is that we should start to question how these things are run. And I remember seeing a report about Durham University, but also it's about everybody having that conversation and recognizing, yes, we can do better. And what I admire about Durham is they came to us. We didn't come to them. They said, hold on, we've got to increase our diversity. We've got to do more about including Black students. And they actually approached us.
Fantastic.
And we said, okay, we can help. And they've set up programs, and they've now got Black students. And we're going to maintain that, and we're going to discuss that with them further.
You know why I like that? Why I like that, the way that you framed that narrative, is because it's not, you weren't going for them. They recognized the brilliance, the excellence which the Reach Society is doing and trying to achieve. And that's recognition. And I think that's a really excellent thing that you guys have achieved in the time.
I think what it is, I mean, we have a management team, but I think what's impressed me more is that many of the events we do, we rely on the community, and they've been amazing in terms of us collectively working together in order that we can inspire the next generation, because it is about the next generation. And that's great. And as I said, we're going for 10 years. Oh, I've got a bit of a plug. So if anybody's interested,
I'm going to have to censor this. Hold it up a little bit. Hold it up a bit.
Yeah. So it's our 10 years. It's been written primarily by our chair, Dr. Dwayne Neal, OBE. So if you go on our website, which is www.reachsociety.com, he's really written about our 10 years, how we started, and there's we put in loads of pictures of our various events, etc. And we're just about telling our stories. We hope, as they say, like this conversation, it's hope that telling our stories can help us and make us stronger.
Right. Donald, I'm just wary of the time, because I know the two of us could just sit and chat for hours.
We could talk.
But I'm going to just see if there's anyone who's listening in who would like to ask a question. Otherwise, I'll continue asking questions. If there is, if you want to raise your hand or put a question in the chat, then we can. don't. I haven't seen any hands at the moment.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask a follow-up question just in case any others come in, right? What you haven't really told me what has been your overall inspiration behind your inspiration and your motivation behind all the activities that you do.
I mean, I guess the inspiration comes from, I mean, it's many, and it's varied. I think it's really just one in myself trying to do better, but more importantly, giving back, because I know my success, if you want to call it that, and I sometimes cringe at that, that when I say that, but it was dependent on others.
Right.
This is not solely down to me.
Yeah.
It was people that were fighting for equality, etc. You know, so when you and I remember, you and I met once in a hotel, and it just was coincidental. It was the 50th anniversary of the Race Relations Act. And I remember we were discussing, and we said, realize 50 years ago, we couldn't sit in this hotel.
That's right.
And have a drink.
That's right.
You know, and and it's recognizing what those great individuals did. And in many ways, it's of then sort of giving back. And that's, part of, sort of my inspiration. And I guess, and I'm hoping partly my visibility and my presence can also inspire others. I mean, the way it was for me, for example, again, as a kid, one of my inspirational heroes was Muhammad Ali. Never met the man, but I remember watching an interview with him and Michael Parkinson. Again, I'm really showing my age, but these are now on YouTube. The way he spoke eloquently, and the comments he raised, it was like, wow. And this is in the days when there was a black and white TV. So, but more importantly, he was, it was like, wow.
Yeah.
The way he spoke, it was phenomenal. And yeah, I just hope that, I can, sort of reach back and do the same in kind of a humble way. There's one of my quotes, and boringly, I know when I quote all the time, but one of them comes from Nelson Mandela when he says, I'm sure others have heard it, what counts is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we live. Nowhere am I compare myself with Nelson Mandela, don't get me wrong. But I think collectively, if we can all, and I'm using that term collectively, if we can all inspire and help the next generation, then I think we've done something.
Yeah, brilliant. We've got a couple of questions which have come in, Donald.
Yeah, certainly.
Sarah, do you want to ask your question directly, or would you like me to ask?
I can come in.
Hiya.
Sorry.
Wait, sorry. We'll go with Sarah Rankin, then we'll have Sarah. Hiya.
So,
Hi.
is it Sarah? Oh,
Hiya.
We've got two, sorry, we've got two Sarahs on.
You've got two Sarahs.
Oh, and a little one.
And the little one. So, Sarah Rankin. Now, I have known Sarah. I don't even know if we want to embarrass Sarah or myself. So, in fact, my first postdoc was at ICRF, which was
Crick, equivalent to the Crick we were at.
But no, I met Sarah, and it's a pleasure to see you, Sarah. And I remember when we were at ICRF together, we did some really good work and things like that. So your question.
And I remember, the one thing I remember from that is that we were the only two UK postdocs on that floor, weren't we?
Yeah.
And that was quite interesting. Anyway, question was sort of how do you balance your EDI with your research teaching, and does the RVC sort of value your Reach Society work?
Yeah, so no, but one, they very much do. They've frankly, they've even put that in their OFS. and they've spoken to me on many occasions. And in fact, like other universities, we're now setting up a task group to look more closely, and I've been asked to sit on that. And we've mentioned that the idea of, and this is a point I've heard others have mentioned, in that if we're doing these activities, then it should also be recognized by the institution. And I think that's absolutely right. And they do that, which I'm grateful for. And
yeah, the other thing was, what would be your ideals of next job or position?
Now, you see, you say that, right? I'm still employed by the RVC.
They're not listening in. So.
No, Wayne told me this is recorded. No,
well, they need to know that,
Well, no, I mean, for me, there's two things, I guess, in terms of further position. One, to develop further in the RVC, but also slightly outside the RVC. So I'm not saying I don't want to not answer your questions, but I'm chair of governors of the school. And what I'd like to do is go into other positions where I can sit on boards of trustees, etc. That's, so one, there's the academic side. Yeah, I definitely want to continue to pursue. But now that I've been on a couple of boards and realizing the influence trustees have, that's something I'd really like to pursue more. I think the opportunity.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing. That's another area where, you talk about actually having to have those sorts of connections and those conversations with people early on in their career, such that they can, understand what the best pathways are. But I think even us as sort of senior people, we don't have that sort of network whereby we know how to be a trustee or how to get those sort of positions or be on a board or something like that.
I only got that just because my daughter went to the school and she's no longer at the school. Because I can't remember. I went to parents' evening. I wasn't happy about a certain thing, and then eventually they said, "Okay, why don't you be a governor?" And that was it.
But you think like you'd be great on somewhere like the Runnymede Trust or those organisations, but how do you get those positions?
I don't actually know.
But I think that's it, isn't it? Other people know because you meet people that are on lots of these things. So, and I think, like you say, you sort of, it's like that thing, you need to be on one to then be on another one and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'll let other people talk.
I'm seeing, Donna, I knew this was going to happen. Right? We've got 1,001 questions flying in now. I've got one from Red, I've got the other Sarah, I've got Dwayne. Sarah, and I'm gonna take a tip out of your, whenever I've seen you doing panels, you've always said to the panelists, right, you're gonna have to do this answer in 1 minute, no more than 1 minute, please. Right? So Donald, I'm just doing right. So Sarah, if you would like to ask your question, and then Red, and then Dwayne, please.
So my one is almost a quick follow on from what Red had mentioned as well, and from what you were saying about the attainment gap and how you kind of didn't have the real data about it back when you were there. I was just kind of adding to that, say, well, now we've got the data that backs up what we'd suspected in the past, and not only the attainment gap, but also with promotions, with tensions, ethnicity pay gaps, that kind of thing. What do you think more can be done with that now that we have this proof? We've said it, wasn't listened to, we have the proof, now what?
So one of the things which I've read, and maybe Wayne, not trying to deflect the question, but Wayne and Sarah might comment more. But what I understand for the Office for Students is that they are now saying that if universities, don't improve, particularly in terms of the awarding gap, they may be fined. So it will be interesting to see if the OFS or other bodies will do things around that. I mean, it's similarly where awarding bodies, grants, etc., what they've done, for example, around the Athena Swan, where universities clearly need to fix, you know, their gender equality. And maybe the next question to ask is around ethnicity and race, to say, you know, look at that gap. And if you are not actually being fair, we may need to look at what you're doing. So it's when you look at it, it's maybe having rules and regulations, and history have told us that's partly one process that works. So that may necessarily be the case, and partly, I think organizations will clearly have to change, because if you look at the student body that's coming in, so one of the questions I've got from a dear friend of mine talked about RVC and its diversity, and the RVC has dramatically changed. It's great, but eventually those young people will be adults. So you know, it's really a case of society will change, and we've seen it now with Black Lives Matter protests, which have been predominantly young people, because they're saying, of all background, they're saying, no, we're not going to put up with this, the status quo. I mean, you saw in Bristol, and I was reading about it, was in Bristol, with the statue, for example, that was being debated for a long time. Young people just said, well, forget the debate, and just took it down. So it's a difference. But they're the future generation, and they're asking older, senior, I won't say older because that might get people in trouble, but senior people questions of, why has it taken you this long?
All right, thank you for that. I'm going to move on. Thanks for that question, Sarah. Red, if you wanted to ask yours, and then Dwayne. I can see Sunday's itching to get in as well.
We
might have to leave that to the after party.
Red.
Right, I'll be quick. So my question was basically around taking non-conventional routes, Donald.
Yeah.
And I'm also taking a non-conventional route in lots of ways. So I'm sort of a medic, but I've come out and doing a separate postdoc, not in an academic clinical sense, but just academically. And I want to know what you do or how you really motivate yourself. You mentioned mentors, and I'm on the hunt for finding a good mentor for where I want to go. But in terms of like your personal psychology, what do you do when you're the only one, you know, taking an odd route?
One of the things I would often do, I go to the barbers.
Red's not going to the barbers.
Yeah, just get my hair cut and just generally talk. No, I tell you what really is, joking aside, what really helps is having your family and friends around you where you can discuss things, and that's really important. And you know, argue about things, and just aware of the discussion, how you feel, which is why I do what's really encouraging in many sectors now. You're seeing various networks that are being formed, which provide a safe space for people to discuss, but also potentially to share ideas. And that's really important. So I get, you know, part of my, you know, inspiration and motivation by, you know, some of the dear friends I've got, you know, working with some of the amazing people in Reach Society. But I'll tell you you know, finally, where I get my inspiration from is from people like you, Ren, the young generation who are amazing. And what's been encouraging is that I've met some really talented and amazing young people. You know, when I was their age, that I wasn't really thinking in the same way they were thinking. You know, I can name some organizations on the top of my head, people who are, you know, like the organizers behind Melanin Medics. They're currently medical students. Khadija Awasu, I think is her name, and if I mispronounce that, sorry. But people like that, you know, they're medical students, and they've set up these charities because they recognize there's underrepresentation. I wasn't doing that when I was their age. Wow. And there's so many other people that age who are actually trying to, you know, bring about change. No, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Super, thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Dwayne, and if we have time, I'll bring Sunday in. Dwayne, if you would like to.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. Hi, Donald.
Oh, hi there, Dwayne. How are you?
I'm not bad, mate. You look exactly the same. I swear you haven't aged at all, man. Yeah. So my question. So, having studied at the RVC, like, when did I leave? 2008.
Yeah.
So it's over a decade now. So, how has diversity and inclusion changed since I was there?
Yeah, it's very much changed, and I can give you one really clear example. Is really the amazing work again of it's young people. There's a group of young people that have set up what's called Animal Aspiration. So Animal Aspiration is part of the student union of the RVC, which has been set up by groups of students of all diverse backgrounds, because they recognize there's underrepresentations of BAME students, particularly going into veterinary medicine. So what they've been doing is they are now going into schools, talking to young people. They're raising the platform of veterinary medicine to say, look, being a vet, you can come from any background, any walks of life. And so they're doing really great work to increase the diversity of the student body. And I think that's really important, because they're doing, again, similarly of the adage, what you can see is what you can be. And so I really admire what they're doing. And then, from the staff point of view, it is really about making sure we have a diverse staff. We can be more diverse, I believe. But it's just really part of, and the reason why I say that is really about recognizing what the vet college does. And I guess that's part of the thing. So I must admit, when I applied to the vet college, which is almost 20 years ago, I thought the vet college was only for vets. So, well, in fact, it's not. But, they do a whole host of biological sciences. They actually have a course called biological sciences. So maybe it's people being aware of that university that may help. People think, oh, okay, so I can apply there, which is partly what, the guys the students are doing at Animal Aspirations, trying to make sure, look, you can come to this university. It's got courses similarly to what's at other universities.
Fantastic. Donald?
Yeah.
I know Sunday wants to get in.
Yeah, Sunday, you better get him in, because...
and I won't hear the end if I don't let Sunday ask the question. So, Sunday, if you can ask...
I'm gonna be very short. Donald, well done.
Thank you, sir. Oh, the
right.
short.
I don't know how you do it, but well done. One thing I wanted to say here is that I've got a question, but one comment. When you used to invite us to your event every year, myself and Mark Richard, we only have one aim when we come in there: to recruit those young boys and girls to come to Imperial College. And the one who is in Keynes and other university, we used to try and convince them to transfer to Imperial College. So well done. I will continue to support you. But my question is
that King's College might not come again next year.
No, they will come. There's nobody from King's College on this forum. We banned them.
Can they actually say?
My question is, where do you see this going in the next 10 years? You've done so well in the last 10 years, and you've even published a book telling the story about it. Where do you see, and how do you expect people like us to support you even better?
Well, I remember speaking to Dwayne and Rob about where do we see yourself in 10 years' time. It's really, we want, not, I say this and then Dwayne may call me, said, no, Donald. But partly what we want to try and do is to inspire the next generation to pass the baton on. Okay. Maybe in Reach Society, but maybe in their own guise. It is to recognize in that, that phrase, we stand on the shoulders of others. And it's hopefully, what we're doing, and as I said before earlier, Sunday, part of who we are and what we are is really a collection of communities. So Reach Society, but we work with, you know, the fantastic Amos Bursary. We work with Urban Synergy, you know, Enfield Caribbean Association. There are many others that we've worked with that collectively is making a difference. And so if you say, where do we see ourselves in 10 years' time, is primarily getting more community groups collectively together with, you know, as what we've done with the Careers Conference, with, you know, private and public and third sector, to show young people there are careers in a whole host of different organizations. Because that's partly what it is, Sunday, is, you know, making young people aware of the many careers and opportunities that are out there, because they may not recognize or see. Not wanting to continue, because I know Dwayne, you know, Wayne is looking at his watch, but I read a report, you know, in terms of schools. So as I said, I'm chair of government school, read lots of reports that for some young people in certain schools, they don't travel that far outside their home or their school. So they confine themselves to you know, to a certain area. So they may not see or be aware of opportunities. And one of the reasons why we host our Careers Conference in central London is that brings these young people to these events. And then more importantly, they see a whole host of opportunities. And one of the reasons why, you know, I'm grateful for like Imperial and King's and even my own university attended, is we've got teenagers there who are, you know, at the age of 13, 14. They may not be thinking of university, but all of a sudden they're seeing this and they're now seeing, oh, these are possibilities. And it's really about, you know, recognizing that.
I'm going to just add a point to that.
Thank
you, Sunday, for that excellent question and all the questions which have come in today. I'm just going to add one point. From what I can see from, and kind of like someone observing from kind of like outside, active participant, right, of the REIT Society, I think one of the objectives that they're looking for is, at the moment, it's quite London-based. But I do know that you have hosted a number of career conferences, and that was the intention, to make your reach more
the idea,
national.
And thank you, Wayne, because one of the ideas would be to do something like this, an employability day, etc., outside London. So in fact, a couple of years ago, we did one in Wolverhampton at the Molineux Stadium football ground, and then last year we did an event at Leicester University, and this year we had plans to do one again at Leicester, one at Birmingham University, and one at Luton. But that didn't, you know, sadly, as I say, with COVID-19, that didn't happen. And the idea would be, we could imagine, in any urban areas, we would go, but then not just REIT Society, but we can get organizations, local communities. And again, it's about highlighting pathways of success, but again, you know, giving young people, as we say, talent is everywhere, but not opportunity.
That's right.
About saying to them, look, have you considered this pathway? Have you considered that pathway? And it's really like that.
Donald, I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you.
Right, it's been wonderful having you as our guest this week. Really has. I know that we could go on and on. I'm gonna have to pull it to a close. So I'm gonna do my usual advert now and just let people know who we've got coming up next week. So this week we've had Donald. Next week our special guest is going to be Harbhajan Bar, who is the director of excuse me, he's the director of human resources at Imperial College. So tune in and we'll have another frank and candid discussion with Harbhajan next week. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you again, Donald. Thanks everyone for joining us.
No, Wayne, thank you very much. And I have to admire what you guys are doing at Imperial and many other people, you know, in the UK and others who are really trying to bring about change. And it reminds me, I mean, people get bored when I keep quoting Obama's, one of my favorite speeches of Obama, when he talks about change, you know, in that we are the change that we seek. And, you know, when he says, you know, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other times. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. And that's collectively for everyone. If we do want to see change, if we do want to end inequalities, etc., then it's a collective groups about do that.
That's right. I'm going to.
Cheers, Donald.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wanting to have a quick chat afterwards? We'll have the after party next.
But no more than 6.
Bye, Donald. Good to see you.
Yes, you too. But so